What is happening? What was the homework for the last class? New physical anthropology, yes. Yes, please tell me, what have you written? Did you see the last class? Yes, okay. Did not write? You have written it? Hmm. Mm-mm. Any example of studies categorically done under new physical anthropology? Okay, good. So in the last class, we were discussing chapter 1.3, relationship of anthropology with other disciplines. And after that, we moved to subfields of anthropology. We talked about physical and socio-cultural. So firstly, we'll talk about linguistics today. Okay, and then we'll move forward. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Psychology. We discussed relationship, difference between psychology and anthropology. We discussed it. Sigmund Freud, Freudian techniques. We talked about it. I also told you about schools of thought in anthro which relate to that, cognitive anthropology. Yes or no? Psychology was not discussed? Okay, see, when we talk about behavioral sciences, so as the name itself says, we are talking about an individual's behavior. So psychology is the broad discipline which is covered there. What is the difference between anthropology and psychology? Can you try to give answers? Anthropology and psychology first. Psychology is the study of behavior of human mind. So predominantly, if you look at this domain, it is focused on mental structures. Talks about how brain responds to certain situations. We also were talking about how COVID had depression and anxiety triggers in certain people because of the long-term manifestations of living alone for a great amount of period. So psychology in its domain is atomistic or part science because it is focusing only on how human brains behave, what are the triggers, okay, what is the pattern, etc. The pioneer in this field, we've talked about Sigmund Freud earlier also. The techniques given by him are called Freudian techniques. Okay. So if you read about psychology somewhere, you'll also find that there are certain psychoanalytic techniques which are given to the patient to understand how the neural mechanism works there. Okay, जैसे lie detector test होता है. Similarly, we have multiple psychoanalytic techniques there. Do you remember what is totem? T-O-T-E-M. What is totem? Kind of a symbolic representation of any godly representation, can I say? It could be a plant, animal, ancestor, anybody, right? So in anthropology, totem comes under the domain of religion specifically. Whereas psychological analysis, the Freudian technique, I'll later on also tell you about this in the chapter kinship. Freud gives a different perspective on how totems might have come or how the dynamics of a nuclear family operates. So the realm of psychology is centered around psychoanalytic techniques and studying the mental structures and the operation of brain with respect to certain impulses. Okay, that is why it is called behavioral science. Whereas anthropology, as I told you, there is a reference to psychoanalytic theory of Freud in kinship. Okay, I'll tell you the story, what this story was, and then you can understand why this story was later discarded. In one of the discussions, we were discussing about what is incest. Remember incest? Where you cannot have sexual relationships with your immediate kin, right? Brother, sister, incest, that type of relationships. So when Sigmund Freud tried to give an analysis as to how different kind of families function and why there is an incest, so he gave this theory where he said that in a conventional manner, because of the forces of nature, there will always be a certain degree of attraction which the daughter develops towards the father and the son develops towards the mother. And predominantly he talks about the son-mother dynamics here. But because father is the dominant figure in the family, the son will not act upon his feelings because father is the dominant figure in that family. So eventually that will subside. But internally, the child, the son, ended up hating his father, right? And then after his father dies, he worships him as a totem. Okay, I have always told you that scholars are a product of their times. The theory might not feel very significant or logical, but also understand this was the beginning of theorizing certain things around us. So they were trying to give an answer as to why incest happens. So therefore he said that for a regulation of a mechanism formally, therefore incest as a rule came later on. This is Freudian psychoanalytic theory which is used in the context to describe how totems came and his view on incest. But however, if I ask you today, if we stand from the anthropological perspective, that theory doesn't stand valid. It is just a kind of a introduction we start with. We give a passing reference to it wherever there is a contextual reference in our answers. Okay? So you can understand the connection. Why we say that anthropology is disciplinary? Because since we are here talking about humankind from every possible aspect, we are also dealing with the mental structures. The school which uses these psychological tools in its analysis is called as cognitive school in anthropology. Cognitive school. Right? To exactly write the name, culture and personality is the exact name of the school. We also call it cognitive school because it is based on cognition. What is cognition? Recognize something. Mental behavior. Cognition is more about the understanding. For example, what do we derive out of a certain pattern? So I'll give you example. In this culture and personality school, we have prominent studies which were centered around the years here, specifically in the post-World War II era. And this school is rich with women anthropologists. Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict. We have used these names earlier also. Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict, and during this particular period, what is happening? World War II. So anthropologists, they cannot go to different parts of the world for their fieldwork tradition because there is a war. So how did they study? They studied, for example, Japanese prisoners in the United States. They studied expatriate populations in the United States to get a know-how that how the Japanese society functions. One of the foundational work here is Chrysanthemum and the Sword. We'll talk about the school in much detail, where they talk about Japan's child rearing practices. That from childhood till adolescent, the child is treated like a flower. Okay, therefore the name of the work was Chrysanthemum is the name of a flower. Okay, national flower of Japan. Chrysanthemum and sword. So chrysanthemum representing the metaphor that a child is treated like a flower from the infanthood stage to the adolescent stage. After adolescence, like a sword, meaning you're very strict with them. So this is a work on child rearing practices, which is an outcome of long-term psychology. I think day before yesterday we were talking about Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway. There also I told you how child rearing practices can be different in both the countries, right? So the overlap between anthropology and psychology is related to the realm of how we have used psychological techniques to give the school called cognitive school, right? Otherwise, we talk about societies and cultures more after using these techniques. This is the idea of similarity between them. Right? So again, you will start your answer with holism, atomism, part science, whole science, and then you will describe these things. Once you finish chapter 6, anthropological theories, and once you finish kinship, you will write these examples on your own. When you come back to these chapters 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, after completing paper 1, you will not study separately for these, because these chapters will eventually be covered. No, you will write these answers on your own. Okay, so don't worry about the school and the scholars. We are going to discuss them in very much detail one by one. Clear now? Psychology part is clear? Fine? Okay. Sorry. I was talking about linguistic anthropology. So do you know what will linguistic anthropology cater to? What is going to be the subject realm of linguistic anthropology? Try to answer. Make it a discussion. Yes, how language influences culture. And what is linguistics? Study of languages. Shall I say, let us reframe it in a more, kind of a formal manner. Scientific study of languages is linguistics. Okay. Scientific study of languages. For example, how? How will I scientifically study language? Do you have any leads? How? Do you know any branches of this? No, that will come here. For example, phonology. What is phonology? Do you know what is phonetics? Study of sound. For example, when you pronounce a certain word, you know, यहाँ पे H silent है. Okay, so I have to pronounce it in a certain way. There is a certain sound associated with every word. The study of those sounds is called phonetics. Therefore, phonology. Morphology is the structure of language. Grammar. So how do we know in English that my sentence should be framed like this? Subject, verb, predicate. Because there is a particular rule. There is a particular grammar which goes along with this particular subject. Right? And syntax. What is syntax? Form. How we have to write in that language. For example, if you see German and French, this pattern will not work. Subject, verb, predicate will not work. Okay? It will seem to you very jumbled. That subject initially aa jayega, verb will go back. Because the syntax or the format of that language is different. Right? This is scientific study of language, linguistics, where I have to break, okay, what is this language? What is the form in which I have to write it? Okay, how do I pronounce the words? What is the grammar? So यहाँ पे we are not focusing on what effect language is going to have on people or how languages are different in different cultures. No, we are only focused on what is language and how to study it, right? Form of the language, form. Syntax is more like a formula. When you write a code, you have to write a form. Okay, hashtags stdio.h. That means if you miss that particular thing in the code, the program will not run. That is a syntax which we have to follow, right? It is like a rule. Okay? Okay. Whereas linguistic anthropology is going to answer this question, that how language influences culture. Does that mean that we are not going to borrow anything from linguistics? No, we will borrow, because linguistics are experts in studying languages. So to a certain degree, we'll also use their techniques to get an understanding. But our outlook, our purpose, our objective is slightly different from what they were doing there. Okay, for example, what will we focus on here? So there is a concept called linguistic determinism, and another concept is linguistic relativism. So look at the term determinism. Indicates that language determines your thought. And the second one is relativism, that language can influence your thought but not determine it. These are two opposite schools of thought. We'll come to this in the chapter language again. So here we are focusing on how human thoughts are mirrored by the language they use. Is there any difference in the language you speak and the language you think? For example, some people think in their native languages, but they frame their answers in English language, if your medium is English. Some people think in English, write in English. You talk to yourself, no, sometime, okay, that I'm getting late ho gaye. So you're talking to yourself in a certain language. These are the paradigms which we are trying to study. And on the basis of this interrelationship, we'll try to ascertain that what is the influence of language on social paradigms. For example, in Hindi, we have two words, tu, aap. Tu you use for your contemporaries and people who are small, in terms of age, younger than you. Whereas aap is for elders. In English, there's only you for both of them. Right? But in Hindi, if I'm talking about the widespread notions of the ancient philosophy and the existence of caste systems, I will get to know that what is the social status of a person on the basis of the way that person is being addressed in the rural society. So that is what I mean when I'm talking about analyzing social paradigms, right? And how will they come to this analysis? By using ethnographic fieldwork. Because depending upon the area which the anthropologist is studying, they will have different language. So India is rich in diversity. So in Tamil, I'll have different perspectives. In Hindi, I'll have different perspectives. So ethnographic analysis is necessary to arrive at certain conclusions here. Is the purpose clear? Okay. Now, if I talk about the scholars, who were the prominent ones in terms of linguistic anthropology? First one, Edward Sapir. Benjamin Worf. Don't worry, we'll come back to this again in language. In case you can't remember them today, you'll remember them eventually. And the most popular one. In the last class, I introduced you to Franz Boas. What is the name of his school of thought? Huh? Yes, be loud. American school. Historical particularism. American, he's an American person. Okay, American person. What did historical particularism say? Every culture has its own history, its own language, its own reasons to be in a certain way it is today. This is what cultural relativism also means. So I told you he's the founder of the idea of cultural relativism in anthropology. Right? So he contributed significantly that how should you study different societies when it comes to language? You have to focus on the ethnographic fieldwork tradition, study societies one by one, and then decide. Okay. Apart from this, what will we do in linguistics? Document indigenous languages. Do you know of any indigenous language that went extinct from India? You know the concept of endangered languages? Yes. Can you name any language which has gone extinct from India? So in 2015, a language called Bo was spoken in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It went extinct. Why? Because it was a indigenous language. We did not have it documented. There are no textbooks. There is no literature. There are no teachers. There are no students who are studying this language. So how will the language survive? How is English surviving in India, 75 years after colonialism disappeared? Because we are reading their text. Because they left a legacy in the form of school systems which we are following on the basis of their prototype. This is not like what Japan is doing, right? In Japan, you have to know Japanese if you have to study, right? So the second purpose of linguistic anthropologists is to document indigenous languages, right? Is the purpose clear? Now, if we talk about scope of linguistic anthropology, there are different branches of linguistic anthropology which cater to different areas. For example, sociolinguistics, okay, ethno-linguistics. As the name says, when I'm talking about a particular ethnicity and digging their linguistic history, I'll cater to ethno-linguistics, right? There's another one, ethno-semantics, okay, studying the linguistic structures of certain societies. As I told you, despite the purpose being different for both the disciplines, there will be a significant overlap where we are going to borrow their tools to develop a better understanding. In fact, these two people, Sapir and Worf, they are very famous for giving a hypothesis, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, where they talk about the concept of linguistic determinism and relativism. Both of them will give their own perspectives that no language determines your thought. If you speak a particular language, that language will guide you in how to think. Whereas relativism says that language only influences, not determines. Influences means to a good degree it can influence you, yes, but it will not determine what you are going to think. So determinism is considered to be an extreme perspective in linguistics. Clear? This is clear? Okay, now let us talk about scope. So when we highlight the first and the foremost important thing is because when I'm talking about linguistic anthropology, my primary goal is to make sure that we study all indigenous languages in the country. So method, you know, ethnographic works and extensive fieldwork tradition. Both of it was popularized by Franz Boas. These are the pointers which you can use to write your answers. Yes. Ethnographic work is detailing the work. It's a kind of a text. So I told you on the basis of the linguistic paradigms which we use, we can understand what kind of stratification exists in the society, right? For example, in Hindi, you have you के लिए दो words, आप और तू, whereas in English it is only you, right? So depending upon the number of societies I study, I can codify their languages and understand that is language inculcating a kind of a stratification within the society or not. Okay, it is specifically for societies which are rich in ethnographies in terms of different indigenous communities, right? It helps us understand the medium of enculturation and acculturation. It is one of the mediums. And this is how they term linguistic determinism, that a culture's vocabulary is influenced by language. Okay, linguistic relativism. Ethnographic works and fieldwork methodology which they are going to use. Medium of enculturation and acculturation. What is enculturation? The habits which you learn from your parents from day one. So, मंदिर के आगे ऐसे करना है, you know, प्रसाद लेने जा रहे हो तो ऐसे करना है, गुरुद्वारे में जाओगे तो ऐसे करोगे. So, these are something which is taught to us by our elders and we accept it without questioning. That is enculturation, right? Hmm? Yes. That is why we are saying that a culture's vocabulary is also decided by language. For example, if you go to UP and Bihar, in those areas, till today, the categorization, the social hierarchy in terms of caste is too much dominant. So much so that they consider the cleaners and the sweepers not even worthy of sitting on the same, you know, on the same court as where they are sitting. They'll make them sit down. Okay, unko basi roti and all. So they'll give old food. So these things are still prevalent today because they consider them to be bhangis. Okay, bhangis are comparable to the erstwhile chandals which existed during the ancient Indian period, who used to announce their arrival by drums so that no Brahmin should see them, otherwise their eyes will get contaminated. So the concept of purity and pollution is too much rooted in the country. So that is why the vocabulary which we use for those people in these belts, at least we have seen, is significantly different than how you would talk to other people. So that is why culture also influences your vocabulary. Language आप वैसा ही use करते हो, right? So that is the point which is being covered here. Yes? Linguistic relativity. Linguistic relativism. Linguistic relativism. We'll talk about it too much in detail in the chapter language. So this all will come back in very much detail. Okay? So there are branches like historical linguistics also. I have been giving this example again and again that we are not able to decipher the script of the Harappan civilization because it is an ancient language, therefore it is in history. So if tomorrow, since the excavations are going on always to fill the blind gaps, if tomorrow we are able to decipher the script and we try to study their language, okay, their carvings, and we are able to interpret how their culture was, so that again will fall under the domain of historical linguistics, where we are focusing on ancient or historical languages, right? It will become more clear to you when in ancient history you will study where Prakrit was dominant, where Sanskrit was dominant, right? You will get an understanding. No, we'll not find the carvings of them. It's not an ancient language. See, Bo language was extinct because there was a very small community group which spoke that language. And secondly, there were no textbooks, no codification of the language. For example, in our different states, though we all have studied in English medium schools, but we also have state boards and state Hindi medium, Tamil medium, Telugu medium schools, Gujarati medium schools, whereby we have that text codified. So that language will not go extinct. There are epics, there are documents, there is a coursework. People speak that language at home. For example, at home we speak native language. No, in classes we speak English, right? But this was not the case with Bo. It was a secluded island, first thing. Second thing, no teacher wants a posting in a secluded place. So when anybody wants to be a teacher also, they clear the NET exam. They want a good place, no? Everybody wants this. That is why this year government has made mandatory for MBBS holders. 1 year remote posting has been made mandatory. Because you're not wanting to go to remote areas. And we keep on pushing healthcare is important, last mile connectivity. They said that they'll be available on video conference. Okay, so if video conference would be successful, do you think internet infrastructure is there? Laptop or computer will be in working condition? So there are so many hurdles. So there was an institutional lack because of which so that is why we give a push to endangered languages. Endangered languages are those which are at the verge of extinction, which can be preserved. So train teachers. What is more logical? To train and recruit teachers locally. So local teachers will want to be in that area also, right? Second, codification in the form of textbooks, okay, promoting their folklore, their literature, their poetry, the ethnic movies and all, no, nukkad nataks, etc. So these will be the methods using which we can do it. Otherwise, these languages go unnoticed because no government is noticing a group of people. Okay, so that is why it went extinct. It is not an ancient language. It is a contemporary language which went extinct because of us. Okay, we did not do enough to preserve it. That is why the knowledge also, no, the traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, that will also go away if we do not codify it. We were talking about the importance of indigenous knowledge earlier also. Yes, yes, the herbals and all kind of knowledge. Okay. So I have a homework for you. You will write an answer now. Since everybody is only preparing a framework, not now, you will write the answer today and show it to me tomorrow about the definition, scope and relevance of archaeological anthropology. Monday. Origin and scope of archaeological anthropology. You can refer to whatever material you have and then try to write an answer. One page, both sides, 150 words. First, you will write introduction where you will define what is archaeological anthropology. Then you will talk about the field, what is important in the field, what do they rely on, right? After that, you will talk about the scope. Just underline what the question is asking. Definition first, then scope, and then trace it. Conclusion, you can give examples like Indus Valley Civilization excavation, Neanderthal. These are recent examples. Last year, Nobel Prize was given because of Neanderthal Denisova category, controversy. IVC excavation is still going on. So these are some things which you already know. Here, there is no information gap. It is a very generalistic thing. And when you write the definition, also write the branches of archaeological anthropology. Branches. Try to answer this question and I'll discuss this part when you write the answer. Okay, so like we have discussed every subfield, I want you to discuss that subfield in the form of an answer. We'll have a discussion on this when you come on Monday. Comfortable? Okay, now we have to start writing answers because from today onwards we are moving to anthropological theories. Okay? No. We have a class on Monday now. Okay. Okay. Do you remember the class where we discussed how beginnings of anthropology happened, how anthropology as a discipline began? So remember the Greeks and the Romans, and then we saw how formative period, convergent, constructive, analytical. Remember all of that? So can I say that as a result of the age of Renaissance, what happened? It led to emergence of humanism or humanistic school. What is humanism? Human values like, remember this, popularized by American and French Revolution. After this, what happened? Change of thought, yes, because this is the age of the Enlightenment. So there is a significant shift, can I say, from abstract thinking towards positivist thinking. This is the shift in thinking which we are having. Why abstract? Because earlier what was the norm? Everything is divine creation, no logic. But now we are shifting to positivism, which is based in science. You were asking that, what is positivist school, which is based in science. So where we'll talk about natural processes and natural organisms and the evolutionary perspectives. So this shift was happening for every field simultaneously. And as a result of this shift, we see the evolution of social sciences. Try to understand this term. This is highlighting the idea that even humanities can be a science. There can be logic behind how societies were created, how marriage came as an institution, how family and kinship relations came about. For example, why do we call our cousins by different names? Okay, for example, for cousins from mother's side, you will see in certain cultures there will be different term. Whereas for cousins from father's side, there will be different term. And in some cultures, they are all same. In some cultures, you get married with your cousins. In other cultures, we tie rakhi to all of them. Right? So different cultures, different paradigms. How did that happen? There has to be a logic behind it, science behind it. So after the age of enlightenment, there was focus on how we can define evolution of social institutions also. Therefore, if I talk about anthropological perspective, we saw the evolution of a school called as classical evolutionism. This is the initial school of thought. But from this phase to this phase, there was a contribution of a lot of scholars, which I will give you a passing reference also. You will get to know them. Do you know Montesquieu? Have you studied polity? Montesquieu. अरे सबको पता है? No? The person who was responsible for prescribing the idea of separation of powers for the first time. Every polity teacher tells you this, otherwise every polity NCERT tells you this. Okay, I thought you know this, so I can take his help. Okay, let's try to establish now how from here to here we came to this ground where classical evolutionism as a school of thought came. Now the roadmap is clear. This is how every social science was beginning. Now we'll discuss how anthro began, right? What do you understand by anthropological thought? Matlab, are you able to understand the meaning? What does anthropological thought mean? Yes. What every prominent anthropologists are thinking and reasoning about the emergence of society and social institutions. Evolution of man, evolution of social institutions like kinship, marriage, family, polity, economy. One basic example, today we are a democracy. We were not a democracy 100 years back. So there is a road India has traveled. We have evolved from being a colony to a democracy. And there are a lot of reasons how this happened. So that is a thought, how it happened. You can reason on it. Similarly, now a lot of anthropologists will come and start reasoning how things around us are in the way they are today. Okay, so we'll try to trace the history backwards. What is the origin of religion? How society functions? What are laws, customs, norms? Every question will be answered. Now clear? Okay, so I'll give you a passing reference of some scholars at least, which will help you build a perspective. Okay, you will not have to blatantly memorize them. Classical evolutionism. So during 1700s, there were certain very famous Scottish thinkers. Scottish thinkers, their names are, I think everybody knows Adam Smith. Adam Smith, economy. Must have heard in your life once, Adam Smith, you know, free market. He very famous. Just like Montesquieu is famous for polity, Adam Smith is famous for economy. You'll study him in NCERT otherwise. Okay, so Adam Smith, John Miller. See, you don't have to remember all these names. I am telling you a story so that you can build a context. Okay, and Adam Ferguson, 3 people. Their names are not important. I will tell you where it is very important and you have to remember the scholar. Okay. So these people, for the first time, said that all societies have evolved through certain stages. These were the first people who gave a perspective that societies have evolved from being hunter-gatherers to pastoralists. Okay, they were giving a gradation of evolution of societies. Agriculturalists, and then finally commerce, as we know it. This was for the first time someone proposed the evolution of society. Today we are in this stage and we consider it to be a civilization. So when you talk about Indus Valley people, when you talk about Egyptian civilization, Aztec civilization, we use a prefix called civilization. Civilization means epitome of development. Some phenomenal things were there in the civilization. A good polity, a good ruler, okay, some particular customs, currency, okay, they were very well driven in terms of economy, gold coins, etc. Civilization means a very big establishment, a very big formal establishment. So when these people were trying to reason how have we achieved the stage in which we are today, they gave this map of evolution. That early everybody was a hunter-gatherer. Stone Age, okay, where what was the idea? Where how will we get the next meal? In Stone Age, there was only one question. You have to come back to your hunting settlement and you have to take care of your family, immediate family. There was no concept of family yet, but man used to travel in groups of people, in groups, 10 to 15 people, because killing an animal would become easier then. Okay. Second stage was where we became pastoralists or nomads. Herders, can you name some nomadic tribes in India? Gujjar, very good. So when you will study geography NCERT, you will see all these names. Gaddi, Gujjar, Bakkarwal. If you go to the mountains, have you seen people heading a huge flock of sheep? For that matter, Rajasthan, if you go this side also, you will see a lot of them. Okay, we call them Gadriyas here, but they are called as Gaddis, Gujjars and Bakkarwals in Himachal. So second stage was nomadism. After that, settled agriculturalists, when the concept of settlement and property came in, and this is the time period where humans now have the agency and free time to think, right? Otherwise, they were all the time busy. So from this point onwards, we'll see significant development in terms of society, industries, market, and finally it culminates in a good economic and commerce which we are a part of today. This is for the first time these people gave us theory of social evolution. Okay, this is nothing but a theory that how society has evolved. Now come to your friend Montesquieu. As I told you, what is his forte is polity. Okay, so he says that legal system has a close overlap with the social systems, social or cultural systems. Apart from this, one more thing, he was the first person to give a gradation of social evolution of societies from the stages called savagery to barbarism to civilization. This is something classical evolutionists will use later. That is why this is important now. I'll tell you where it is important. Remembering them is not important. This is a story I am telling you so that you can grow a link with the subject. Okay? This understood? What is S? A stage called savagery. What is savagery? Savage state. Savage means the stage of hunter-gatherers. Okay? Barbarism. Barbarism. Have you heard this term? There are some tribes who are barbaric. That means they kill you in a merciless form. Okay, so barbarism. And finally, civilization. Also keep in mind parallelly that these people are Western scholars. So they will always consider civilization to be the definition of their society. Okay, the society where they are living is the best of civilization. So he was the first person. And besides this, also write for your reference that later on, classical evolutionists like Tyler, Morgan will use this concept. Fine? Do you remember this? Yes. Both of them are social evolution, how societies evolved. See, if all of us are anthropologists and we have studied different societies, we all will come with our theories. So these people are theorizing that how society must have evolved. So all of you are giving your answers that according to me it evolved like this. So according to Montesquieu, it evolved like this. According to the Scots, it evolved like this. Right? I am giving you a background yet. Okay? Huh. The legal systems which Montesquieu was studying about, how laws regulate the society or how laws should function. For example, I told you he was responsible for the idea of division of powers, that legislative, executive and judiciary should be separate. So he said that just as we have certain legal systems which operate in a certain prototype, in a certain way, similarly we can apply those systems and study the socio-cultural systems. He did not give a detailed makeup on how to study the social systems like he did for legal, but he prescribed this for his idea of socio-cultural systems. Okay, this reference is because he specializes in legal. Okay, he specializes in law. Clear? Okay. Now, when all of this is happening, one more thing is happening, European imperialism. We have discussed this earlier also. Because of imperialism, we have a lot of travelogues. This point is already clear to us, right? We have a lot of traveler accounts. On the basis of these travelogues, what was concluded? That the Western societies are the civilized ones and the non-Western or indigenous societies are non-civilized. Now, to give a specific term for them, they started using the term primitive for these people because they believed that they are in the advanced stage. So this point you already know, okay? So this is where the identification of process started to happen, that okay, if there is an indigenous tribe who is not living like us, they are primitive. So can I say that there was always a certain degree of ethnocentric bias here, and the conclusion is coming from armchair anthropologists. They studied one or two societies and they concluded that whoever is not living like us is a primitive. So the term primitive was considered to be a representation of a backwardness for a particular community in a certain stage. Now comes your friend. Remember him? Herbert Spencer. Who is he? He is famous for? Yes, the idea of evolution, where he talks about survival of fittest and he defines what evolution is. I will tell you his definition today later in the class. He defined what evolution means, and who was influenced by his idea and used his idea? In 59, na? Darwin. Yes, any doubt? Survival of the fittest. Auguste Comte also I have told you about, right? Auguste Comte, remember anyone? Idea of social evolution. What was his idea of societal evolution? Evolve. Yes, organism, that is fine. He gave the stages also, no? Theological. Yes, good. Metaphysical, rational. Now is it clear? Everybody is coming and they are giving their perspectives that how societies have evolved according to them. This is 59. So you know this, theology is based in religion, okay, metaphysical to supernatural powers, and rationalism to science. There is another scholar, Henry Maine, last. He is also a sociologist. Till now we are referring to sociologists. I told you the origin of this discipline is going to use a lot of sociological concepts. So Henry Maine says that territory-based societies evolved to kinship-based societies. Okay, his idea was on kinship. 𝐒𝐻𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 Durkheim, another sociologist. Now is the idea clear to you? What are everybody theorizing? How societies evolved. For somebody it is from hunter-gatherer to nomads on the basis of the occupation peoples have been having by virtue of living on this planet. For Montesquieu it was savagery to barbarism to civilization. For Auguste Comte it is theology to metaphysical to rational. For Henry Maine, it is territory-based to kinship-based. By this he means membership to a particular society was territory-based earlier, but now it evolved into kinship-based. And 𝐒𝐻𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 Durkheim says societies have evolved from simple to complex. This gradation of societies happens through these three stages. Now, using this as a backdrop, we saw the emergence of classical evolutionist school in anthropology. As the name says, they are evolutionists. What will they focus on? Evolution. Evolution of what? They will explain to you how societies evolved, how marriage evolved, how religion evolved. So there are different scholars. Okay, everyone? So now moving to paper 1, chapter 6. Anthropological thought. Okay, you can write the heading chapter 6. So on the basis of, so you can begin begin this, this particular chapter. So just write 2 or 3 lines. Following these leads, 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 given by 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐬, Montesquieu, Durkheim, Spencer and others, the discipline of anthropology formally began its theoretical journey with, write in inverted commas, classical evolutionism. Journey. Theoretical journey with classical evolutionism, I guess, है ना? With classical evolutionism, just that. Yes, began its theoretical journey with classical evolutionism, meaning classical evolutionism is the first theory which you will study. Is the backdrop clear? No doubt still here, right? So now if we look at the syllabus, paper 1, chapter 6, the first theory is evolutionism, and in the bracket they have written 3 scholars, Tyler, Morgan, Fraser. Now onwards, I'll tell you that you have to remember these people. You have to actively make an effort, and it will be beneficial if we start making the effort from now onwards, because there are about 8 theories. It will take about 15 classes. So as the classes go by for a particular theory, go home and read that theory from your references. There is a purpose of reading it on your own, because it will help you build a perspective and develop a link. The picture will be clear to you. And this chapter forms the foundation of entire discipline, entire course. So this chapter is very important, and we have direct questions from this chapter every year. So any theory can be asked as a 20 marker, 15 marker, or 20 or 10 marker also, right? So make sure that you try to retain the names of the scholar from now onwards. Second point, although the syllabus mentions 3 scholars, but there are much more, so to speak, evolutionist scholars which we'll talk about, 2 or 3 more, so that our answers can use them as references, since toppers are writing these people who are not mentioned in the syllabus also. So to have an edge over there, to achieve that barometer, we'll make sure that we add some extra perspectives as well. Then I leave it to your domain, whether you want to read just 3 or 5. Okay, that is your domain. But from now onwards, remembering the scholar is important. The scholar, their work, and their concept. And I'll repeat it so many times that it will come naturally to you. Fine, everyone? The source for this portion, either you can go back to your 𝐒𝐻 material, which I have compiled the handouts also from. And second will be anthropological thought, history of anthropological thought by 𝐾𝐲 and 𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐼. So whoever is able to read that book, you can read that also. Clear? Okay. So beginning of classical evolutionism. There was a great degree of influence you will see in this particular school of thought from Charles Lyell also. Remember Charles Lyell, uniformitarianism principle, right? Apart from that, Herbert Spencer, who tried to define what evolution means. So he gave the definition of evolution as shift from indefinite, incoherent homogeneity towards definite, coherent heterogeneity. Try to understand. Indefinite to definite, incoherent to coherent, homogeneity to heterogeneity. While this shift happens, there are a multitude of factors which are responsible for the shift, which he said are innovation, integration, diffusion. This is the definition which he gave about the scheme of order of things in the society. And then he gave the concept of survival of fittest and natural selection. He used these terms. So these anthropologists thought, when we can use these ideas of evolution in the context of science, why can't we use that idea in the context of anthropology or sociology to study social evolution? Okay, that is why we say that there has been a significant influence of Herbert Spencer's idea of evolution, and therefore the name of the school was also borrowed from there, evolutionism, highlighting how gradually societies have evolved. Now, second point, there are schools of thought. British, German, American, you will broadly see these differences on the basis of the scholars who were doing their work over there. Obviously, in the initial phases, we'll not have any reference to Indian anthropologists because India was a colony and the onset of this discipline happened at a much later time here. But the original or the foundational thoughts were laid by the Western scholars only. And since West is very big, okay, so Europe is also having its research, US is also doing it, and Britain already there. So we have different schools in every anthropological thought. So we have British school, American school, and German school. So Tyler, Fraser, and Morgan, they have been written down, so we have to study them in much detail. Apart from that, so I have written the names. Okay, as I told you, it is your discretion how much you can remember, right? So the British School of Thought scholars are Tyler, Fraser, and Henry Maine. So just now I gave you a reference to Maine also. From US we have Morgan, Louis Henry Morgan, L.H. Morgan. From German we have Bastian and Bischoffen. Different scholars have done works on different areas. For example, Tyler specializes on culture. Fraser specializes on religion. And Morgan specializes on kinship. Okay. So correspondingly, they tried to give us a reasoning that how societies have had different forms of religion, kinship, and cultural paradigms. In fact, if you lift any book, the first formal definition of culture itself was given by him, Tyler. He is considered to be, the first person who gave a definition for culture. There is a scholar, R.R. Merritt, he calls anthropology as Tyler science because Tyler began the discipline, laid the foundations by giving a formal definition of culture, right? And whose idea are they lifting here? They are going to lift the idea given by Montesquieu, the evolution of societies from savagery to barbarism to civilization. Fine? This much is fine? Now look at the principles, the broad principles on which all of them agree. They say that evolution is uniform, universal, and unilineal. Three terms. Uniform, universal, unilineal. What do I mean by evolution is uniform? That means evolution of societies will happen uniformly in same manner in every part of the world. They are not accommodating any place for innovation in a different society. Understand this. The second point is that evolution is universal. Fine. And unilineal, in a single direction, in a single line. And what is the direction? This. That every society aims to come to this stage. So if USA is sitting here and they were studying some tribal population, so they will say that, okay, India is here. But India eventually wants to come here. It will come here at a later point in time. The time lag can be there, but every society will achieve this stage. Uniform, universal, unilineal. Clear? They are not, yeah? Repeat uniform. See, by uniform they mean that the evolution of society will occur uniformly in the same manner in every part of the world. Every society will graduate from savagery to barbarism. It might take 100 years for India, it might take 50 years for Africa, but everybody will uniformly come to that stage. This is what they are meaning. Right? That is why I told you they are ignoring innovation, that any other culture can do innovations differently and they can go to a different path. They are not recognizing that. That is why the biggest drawback is that they are ethnocentric. Ethnocentric bias is there, right? Because they believe that they are sitting in the best place and every else society has to come to the same destination. Final destination is this. It might take 100 years, 50 years, 250 years. But everybody wants to come here and will come here. This is their belief. Clear? If you look at the terms also, they have picked this term from uniformitarianism principle of Charles Lyell. I was wantedly using these terms again and again so that we can get a context from where they are using these terms, right? So this is the first principle. Unilinearity and rectilinearity. Rectilinearity we all know. Rectilineal propagation of light, an experiment we did in class 7. Everybody has done this, no? One candle was lit in, and then you have 3 paper cardboards with a hole, and from the other end, using your eye, you look at the candle or the torch. What did that experiment establish? That light, straight line, rectilinear. So same thing. Unilinear means in one direction, rectilinear means straight line, not like this. Clear? That's the same thing. Now there is a term which I want to introduce you to, psychic unity of mankind. Can you tell me what would this mean? Any guesses? Not settlements. Psychic means what? Related to psychology or mental structures? Unity. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Psychic unity of mankind means that every human will think in a same way. Because biologically we have been produced or manufactured in a certain way, because of which we have a unity, psychic unity, meaning our thought process will always go in the same direction. She is right. So look at the definition here. What is the definition of psychic unity of mankind? A basic set of elementary thought patterns common to all human minds, which produce similar responses to similar stimuli. Okay? That means if we all are put in a certain situation, we will react similarly. Try to understand why they are using this principle. To reason why societies will develop in a uniform way, in a unilinear way. If every human being thinks same, only then they can cross these stages, no? Because everybody wants to achieve this. This condition will be fulfilled only when every civilization thinks in the same way. So they say that biologically our mental structures are programmed in such a way that we will think universally, uniformly, irrespective of where we are. So African human, Chinese human, American human, everybody will think same. The idea is clear? For example, see, irrespective of the environment and houses we live in, we are going to have similar mental structures or thought patterns because of the fact that we are humans. No doubts here? Okay, this is the principle they believed in. And he says because of this, there is an idea which was given by Tyler of culture parallels. Culture parallels are those practices which exists in two different civilizations at the same time or at a different time. For example, clay pot. Use of clay pot as a utensil. You will study in ancient India evolution of different forms of pottery. Okay, initially we'll have red ware, then we have black ware, then we have painted grey ware, PGW. It is not that these evidences were only found in India. They were also found in other places of the world. So this is a good example of a cultural parallel. Parallel means existing in two different societies. Cultural because it is related to a cultural paradigm. Clear? Okay. This different rates of evolution. Already self-explanatory that evolution will be uniform, unilinear, but the speed can be different. Therefore, differential speeds. Isosequential, isodirectional. So in the same sequence, in the same direction. Okay. He also gave Tyler a concept of cultural survival. So just as culture parallel is a concept, cultural survival is a concept. Cultural survival are those practices which are continuing since the earlier age despite losing their relevance. As a inertia, it is still continuing. Okay, that is what cultural survival means. Can you think of any example of cultural survival? Have you seen those Britishers in old movies and all? They wear a tail coat. The coat at the bottom will have a tail end kind of a feature. That was because horse riding was very predominant in the earlier British society. So the garment was designed in such a way that it shouldn't look awkward while riding a horse. But as a formal attire, it is continuing till today. So it is a cultural survival, meaning it has no relevance, but it is just existing there, okay, because of the inertia. Similarly, you can see many cultural practices in Indian realm also. You can think of such examples, which we follow just because it is a part of your culture, not because it is, needed today or it is logical today to do it. Can you think of any examples? Yes, wearing tie in summers. And in fact, the purpose of tie itself was something else. It was not to, in fact, have your neck covered. That can be done by the button also. It was actually meant as a handkerchief initially. Okay, initially it was meant as a handkerchief. Now it is a fashion statement. Yes. Okay, but it is now a very big part of the formal attire. Tie is still relevant. When you will go for your interview, you will also wear and go. But think of tailcoats. Horse riding is nowhere the mainstream, means of transport, but still it is carried forward, right? So cultural survivals, by the name itself you can understand. Clay pots will not be cultural survivals in my opinion, because now we have a repercussion, a different, reinvention in terms of thinking, that if you cook your food at a slow, heat on a clay pot, it's actually good for your body. So do not write clay pot example as a survival. You can use that example as a cultural parallel, right? Okay. Basic principles are clear at least. Okay. Now we'll talk about the scholars one by one. Now look at this diagram. You can identify the terms also. Achha. So, savagery, barbarism, civilization. This is the European society, best civilization. The indigenous societies, who? The Africans, the Asians, and the American other. Who is the American other? So see, when you will study anthropology, you will see a lot of tribes called as American Indians, American tribes. So these are tribal populations within America. Okay, so they considered themselves to be here, but whoever is not like them will be here. Clear? So savagery and barbarism is going to be the domain of Asia, Africa, and tribes. So their graph is meeting at barbarism and savagery, whereas these people are civilized. A rough representation which you can use in your answers. By the way, what is promiscuity? Doing something wrong. Anyone else? Okay, I'll come to this. Drawn? Hmm. Promiscuity. Yes. Promiscuity is where anybody can mate with anybody. It is considered to be the most earliest precursor of marriage. Before marriage, laws, customs were not established. Basically, the form of early humans where we were still animals, so to speak, that stage is called promiscuous. You can write SBC for savagery, barbarism, civilization. It will repeat multiple times. Yes. Okay. Now look at these schemes, broad schemes. For society, this is clear, no more explanation needed. For marriage, promiscuity, then polygamy, and finally monogamy. No explanation needed here. Okay, I have also told you erstwhile that how in certain societies polygamy is necessary. I told you the example of Sembaga also. And if you look at the Gaddi tribes here in India, why they have multiple wives? So that they have more hands to work. Okay, they have more resources. And finally, the culmination in monogamy. From kinship perspective, I'll tell you this. This is from Morgan. Okay, he says earlier we had classificatory type of kinship. Classificatory means you just classify a set of your relatives and call them by a name, same name, no differentiation. Descriptive, as the name says, there is a description for every relation. Okay, so maternal cousin, a different name. Paternal cousin, a different name. Okay, papa's brother, younger brother, different name. Elder brother, different name. That is descriptive. Okay. For example, here we have Mosi, Mama, Tauji, Chacha. That is descriptive. Classificatory will be in some societies, people call their uncles also as Papa and Masi as Mummy. That is example of classificatory. Okay, where you classify a set of relatives and use the same representative kinship term for them. Right? Religion, first animism, then polytheism, and finally monotheism. What is animism? Belief in soul, worshipping soul. And in between, you can also see naturism, totemism. They will be subsumed under this category. Then finally, monotheism. Actually, this is also an interesting story that how this gradation has happened. Tyler says that earlier human beings believed that every object has a soul. And there were two notions with respect to soul. That when a body dies, the soul leaves the body. That was the perspective. And the second perspective was, since people see themselves in their dreams, so therefore the soul is also traveling in the universe. And therefore they started worshipping it because it was related to some supernatural tendencies which were outside their reasoning abilities. And after that, they realized that there are so many souls that it is not possible to worship one soul. So the idea of idealizing souls came about with a hierarchy. Therefore, polytheism. You worship more gods, but with a hierarchy. This god is more important, this god is less important. Chal jayega. Right? For Shivji, everybody is doing fasts and all. And then finally, the culmination happened in monotheism. This is the story which Tyler talks about. No, no, no. Now I'm giving you schemes. Okay, now one by one, I'll give you the contribution made by specific scholars. Right now, I am discussing evolution as a whole. What were their arguments? What were their principles? How did they describe evolution of different societal aspects? Right? Now we are coming to E.B. Tylor, Edward Burnett Tylor. Do you recall in the last class when we were talking about development of anthropology, I told you the establishment of anthropology as a discipline began in 1884 in Oxford University. He was the chair of anthropology. This is where anthropology as a formal discipline began, right? This is his most famous book, Primitive Culture, written in the year 1871. And I told you why it is special. Because he defined culture for the first time. He gave the formal definition of culture. So you can understand, if I say that E.B. Tylor is the father of modern anthropology, you can understand why, right? So these are the name of his books, Primitive Culture and Early History of Mankind. See, primitive culture, everybody should remember. There is no grace marking for forgetting this book. This is one of the, must knows in anthropology. Primitive culture is very important, right? So what scheme did he give? He gave the scheme of evolution of society into savagery, barbarism, and civilization. That is already clear to you. And he was the spearheader of the idea of unilineal evolution. Okay? Tylor's contribution is on two ends. Now you can, under Tylor, you can write one section, societal evolution, second, religion. These are the two factors he addresses. Okay, he is a star for defining culture. That you have to remember. He defined culture in his book, Primitive Culture, in the year 1871. He is the father of modern anthropology. He broadly gave evolutionary scheme for two paradigms, one for society, you can draw the diagram, savagery to barbarism to civilization, and one for religion, animism to polytheism to monotheism. And while he was formulating this idea on religion, what he had in mind was Christianity is the best form of religion, the most evolved form of religion. That is why he believed that religious belief as a system culminates in monotheism, because he was sitting in Christianity where there was only one God. But around him, he saw a lot of tribal people, a lot of different people who were following different gods. Clear? Now is it clear? Tylor's scheme is on two fronts, society and on religion. Next pointer, he believed in the idea of psychic unity of mankind, unilinear evolution. I hope no explanation needed for these points. And finally, he was the one who gave the concept of cultural parallels and cultural survivals. It's all there in the handout. You can just, if you want to make it for your reference, just write in bullet form so that revision becomes easy. Okay, bullet form mein you can write. Under Tylor, you can write these pointers. Though predominantly you will see that Tylor was a armchair anthropologist, since obviously it is self-explanatory. He is one of the first scholars, and fieldwork tradition will come extensively much later on. But yes, there was one scholar in evolutionary school who did fieldwork. That was Morgan. Okay, he studied kinship systems. But however, Tylor was a big armchair anthropologist. He was a big ethnocentrist because while defining religion, he focused on Christianity. And while giving the societal classification, he considered the West to be the epitome of civilizations. Apart from that, he favored use of statistics in anthropology. What do I mean by use of stats? That you collect data or you refer to data from different parts of the world and then conclude. So he preferred or advocated use of statistics. and he was influenced by the idea of uniformitarianism. So can you recall principle of uniformitarianism was given by Charles Lyell. So you can write that. He was against cultural degeneration theory. What does cultural degeneration theory say? That with time, cultures will degenerate. He did not believe that. Why? Because he believed in the opposite, that cultures will evolve in a lineal, universal manner. Okay? And he was also against Auguste Comte's idea of social evolution. Now you know what was Comte's idea, right? Now there is a special reference to a practice which was made by him. A practice called Kuwad. He studied on this also. So when I describe Tyler, there are three perspectives which I'll talk about: society's evolution, evolution of religion, and his study of Kuwad. 3 pointers, 3 main pointers. Now, Kuwad is an ancient practice where the man imitates his pregnant wife. The idea is, in certain societies, it is seen that when pregnancy happens and when labor begins, there is a lot of pain which the woman has to go through. And there are certain societies where the men or the husbands mimic that pain, or they try to feel that pain. How? So by living a secluded, life, or supporting her in her roles. Okay, so they try to mimic the pain which she is going through. For example, when she is in pain, they'll also be in pain, okay, by crying and all these things. So this practice is called Kuwad. Today, there are only minuscule societies which have this. It's not much prevalent. But while he was studying, this practice was predominantly found in multiple societies. He studied approximately 282 societies at that particular point in time. But his observation was that this practice does not exist in matriarchal societies. It only is found in patriarchal societies. Reason being, in matriarchal societies, women are in power. Women are the agency of power themselves. Whereas in patriarchal societies, women were not given that due respect, and therefore, to show a kind of a support to women, their husbands resorted to the practice of Kuwat. Is the concept clear? Matriarchal societies are societies where women are in ownership of everything: property, decision making, rights, everything. So if you look at Khasis in Meghalaya, you will see a lot of women heading sabji mandis. Sabji mandi में जो ठेला होता है उस पे you will see women. Okay, women owning storehouses, women dominating the economy. That is matriarchal. They are also owners of property, owners of land, decision takers, and their husbands move in with them after marriage. Exact opposite of what happens here in patriarchal societies. Okay. So he observed that the practice does not exist in matriarchal societies. This point is clear? Can I say that indirectly on his study of Kuwad, he also mentioned to us that how societies have graduated from being matrilineal to patrilineal. Okay, this point also you can keep in mind. On the basis of this study, I can conclude societies have graduated from matrilineal to patrilineal. Again, this is also showcasing a bias which was existing with Tyler's mindset, because the West was predominantly patriarchal by then. Fine? This is about Tyler. Simple? Can you now, okay, before his criticism, let us look at these pointers also. These are the foundational characteristics of every stage. For example, savagery goes back to hunter-gatherer stage. Therefore, what will be the defining feature of savagery? Stone tools, Food will be wild plants, hunting and gathering economy. So if you remember in one of the discussions, I have told you that women have a greater sense of color because women were engaged in gathering. So if a fruit is ripe, it will be yellow. If it is green, okay, it will be raw. So women, that's why have a greater agency of identification of different colors. Men have a greater agency of mapping. Okay, they don't forget routes and maps because the biological responsibility during the earlier Stone Age was on man to hunt for the animal and bring food back to the tent. So ever since beginning, the cognitive abilities of men have developed to have special regions in brain which help stimulate them to remember the spaces, the routes, the maps. Okay, whereas women are not that good with maps, but they are good with colors. Clear? So what is the defining feature of savagery? Hunter-gatherer societies. What form of religion will they have? Animism, ancestor worship, yes, and worship in spirits. Whereas in barbarism, we'll see the beginnings of agriculture, beginning, not agriculture to that extent that you can make a living out of it. Agriculture is of two types. One is subsistence agriculture and one is commercial. Subsistence is where I am only farming that much which is required for my family to feed. That's it. So if you look at slash and burn agriculture, 𝐒𝐿𝐵𝐼ng, which is practiced by most of the tribals, it is a subsistence way of living. They are not making money out of it, right? So domestication of plants and animals begins. Metals, village settlements, and belief in polytheism. And finally, the culmination happens in the form of civilization. The defining features of civilization are industries, a big economy, monogamy as a practice, rationality or science, right? And monotheism. Simple? Now you will tell me the criticism of Tyler. After listening to his story, what do you think were his drawbacks? Ethnocentric first. What else? Armchair? Hmm? And when he was describing religion, evolution of religion, he assumed that animism was the beginning point for all societies, despite not studying all societies. Are you able to understand? He did not study all of them. Still, he applied this generalization that animism is the beginning of religion for all the societies unanimously. Right? These were his drawbacks. But what is the most star argument which he gave? Scientific definition of culture. Okay, so just write that definition. Definition of culture according to Tyler. Culture or civilization is that complex whole, WHOLE, which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and other capabilities acquired by man as a member of society. Add next point. Max Muller, capital MAXMULLER. Max Muller calls anthropology as Max Muller calls anthropology as Tyler science. This is for you to use in your answers, okay, wherever you can. Calls anthropology as Tyler science. Huh? Definition of culture. Where have you reached? Acquired by man as a member of the society. Huh? You will find out that first. Okay. Quad. Where is quad as a practice found? Try to read about quad, okay? It is a good example. Try to find. If you don't find, I'll make you write it in the next class, okay? Now coming to Louis Henry Morgan, second predominant evolutionist scholar. He belongs to American school. And his foundational work is around kinship. So I was referring to how classificatory and descriptive are two methods in kinship. Okay, he was the person who studied certain societies and broadly gave an idea of how classificatory and descriptive as methodologies of kinship were found identifiable in those societies. And he is one of those people who relied on fieldwork tradition despite being a classical evolutionist scholar, okay? Major first-hand collection, okay? He did not rely on armchair-based ideology. Since his idea was revolving around kinship studies, he is called as father of kinship. If you look at the names of his book also, A System of Consanguinity and Affinity. What is consanguineous or consanguinity? Your blood relations. Okay, consanguineous relations. Affinal relations are relations which are formed because of other relationships. Like there are two families, okay? Your family of orientation, the family where you come from, and then you go to a different family or you create a family after your marriage, right? On that basis, we have these terminology. You will study this in detail in kinship, consanguinity and affinity. So affinal relations are basically marriage-based relations. Consanguineous relations are blood relations. So the name of his book was System of Consanguinity and Affinity. If I talk about the broad scheme which he gave with respect to society and its evolution, he stuck to the broad paradigm of savagery to barbarism to civilization. But he said that it is not so simple that we can have just 3 watertight compartments and it is done. So he divided savagery and barbarism into 3 stages: lower, middle, and upper. Okay? Now see here. On the basis of his division. So we'll start from here. Okay, first stage is savagery. Savagery is divided into 3 stages: lower, middle, higher or upper. In the lower stage, what do we see? Infancy of human race, gather nuts and berries. Gather nuts and berries, that means we are hunter-gatherers. Then in the middle stage, what happened? Discovery of fire. And in the higher stage, bow and arrow. The idea is still we are predominantly discussing hunter-gatherers, but we are also focusing on how, being a hunter-gatherer, we had good tools, okay, from stone tools to bow and arrow. Clear? Now come to barbaric stage, lower, middle, upper. In the lower stage happened pottery. In the middle stage, domestication of animals and plants. Domestication of animal means what? You have now cattle, okay, whom you can milk. You have hens, whose eggs you are using, right? Domestication of plant is small scale agriculture. And I told you more precisely, subsistence agriculture, which is enough for your family. And in the higher barbaric stage, we have metal tools. Now comes civilization, where you have alphabet, language, writing systems. Therefore, everything is known to you by just reading by inscriptions and books. Clear? So, first thing is, he says, the graduation of society from savagery to barbarism to civilization, it is not that easy or that simple. So, he divides it into three stages. First point is clear. Now come to second stage. Corresponding to the stage we are talking, he also gives us a evolution of material culture, family, kinship terminology, and finally socio-political organizations. So you'll see this. Material culture is easy only. From hunter-gatherers, you are moving towards fishing and fire, bow and arrow, pottery, okay? Then say agriculture. This is broad agriculture. And then finally, modern civilization where you have language is fully developed. Okay, this is with respect to material culture. With respect to family, see now, this is also related to marriage. Earlier, the focus was around consanguineous families, and I told you the form of marriage at this particular time was promiscuous. Remember this? Anybody can mate with anybody. Therefore, can I say in this stage, brother-sister incest is permitted? Yes, still we do not have evolution of that kind of laws which will prohibit incest. So that was not there. In the middle savagery stage, you will see bro-sis incest is prohibited. And this form, he is given the name Punulua because he was studying a community called Punulua. He observed it, the incest over there, so he named this after that community, right? Now, in the third stage, there is pairing. What do you mean by pairing? That now people, groups of people are selecting mates. Still it is not clear that here we are talking about group marriages can also be a norm, where one man is married to multiple women. That can be a possibility. Group marriages, or one group of people are married to another group of people and they can mate in between the groups with n number of people who are a part of the group. After that came patriarchal societies, which are predominantly male authority based, and polygyny. Polygyny. Okay, one man, multiple wives, one woman, multiple husbands. And then finally the monogamian culture or the nuclear family. In between this, there had to be matrilineal, which he did not highlight, probably because in his fieldwork he might not have found them. Clear? So parallel to the stage, he was also explaining to us the marriage system. Then comes the most foundational work which he did in much detail, kinship. So he studied Hawaiian societies, Iroquois. Iroquois is a tribe in America, okay? These societies had classificatory method of kinship. What is classificatory? That your father, his brothers are called by the name father. Classificatory. Clear? Whereas in Eskimos, he observed that there is a method of kinship which is called descriptive, where there is a name for every relation. So he assumes that we have evolved from societies who were classificatory to descriptive. Okay, this is the evolution of kinship. Evolution of socio-political organization. See, first you were a promiscuous horde, so no organization. I told you, no, you are moving in groups, hunting for the next animal. You are not any part of a social organization. Second, marriage classes, matricide, where there is a mother's lineage based category. Okay, that is what matricide here means. Fratry, so frater means brother. So in tribes, no, there are two concepts. One is called moiety, one is called fratry. Moiety is division of the population into two parts, broad two parts. Fratry is into four parts. For example, if you go to your village, your father will tell you that these families are a broader part of our family. How? Because your grandfather's brothers were related. Okay, it's their family. So you say that they are your brothers. That is what fratry means. Okay, in Hindi we call it kunba, where you belong to the same kunba but different families, right? So fratry came first, then came tribe, then confederacy, and finally a proper political organization. Promiscuous horde, No socio-political organization. Marriage classes or group marriages where a sense of group formation began socially. Matricide, people tracing their origin to their mother. Okay, see, in the promiscuous, what is the case? Nobody knows who is the parent. Nobody can identify the father. But now you are coming to that stage where you are identifying yourself with your mother at least. After that, phratry, brotherhood. You are able to differentiate your brothers and your families. And then tribe. Tribe is a very big unit. Tribe can be home to an entire forest. And what I am telling you is, tribes are predominantly divided into two moieties and one or more phratries. Why two moieties? Because tribes practice clan exogamy. Clan exogamy. Like caste system practices caste endogamy. You have to marry within the caste. In tribe, you can marry outside your clan. You have to marry outside your clan. That means within your clan, whoever is existing is your brother or sister. So to marry outside the clan, there should be at least two clans. Only then the marriage can happen. So two moieties. The name of those two clans, they are called moiety. Moiety A, moiety B. They can have different symbol. They can have a symbol of a bison or a deer or a lion, anything. These are tribal terms. And phratry is related to your brothers' houses. Okay? So this is a smaller unit. Then tribe is a very big unit. I hope you can understand. Tribe is a very big unit. After that, confederacy, where you rudely are forming a kind of a territory or rudimentary state kind of an idea. Confederacy. When you will study modern Indian history, you will see that confederacy of Trivandrum. Okay, you will study Tipu Sultan. They were confederate states. So Tipu Sultan was with Mysore, but Trivandrum was a confederacy of Tipu. So under Tipu, a small state. So a small rudimentary idea of a state came, and finally the true political organization came with a definitive territory and property to hold. Is it clear? This table is there in your handout. Okay, so don't worry. So with the societal position, in parallel you will be able to gauge what was the position of other related aspects. Clear? Okay, just give it a read once. After the class, you will get an idea. Okay, now this is the kinship diagram which I have taken. We'll study this in much detail in kinship. Don't get scared. Nothing to get scared about. What I'm trying to explain to you here is the descriptive and classificatory methods of kinship. So look at this example, Hawaiian kinship. See, when we'll start the chapter kinship, I'll tell you there are certain rules to draw kinship diagrams. Okay, a triangle for a female, a gola or circle for a male. Okay, equal to means marriage, not equal to means divorce. So there are certain rules which we follow while making the diagrams. This I have taken just for reference. I'll explain you this in much detail in kinship. I wanted to explain to you what Morgan did. So Morgan studied these societies and gave these type of classification of kinship, 6 types on the basis of his studies. Hawaiian was considered to be the most classificatory. Why? See, this is the father-mother generation and this is the brother-sister. Ego is you. So whenever you are drawing any kinship diagram and you are the center of that diagram, you call yourself ego. So I consider ego as you people, okay, and these people are your father, mother, etc., etc. So in this classificatory system, you will see that there is a similar term. The color indicates the term which is used to describe the relation. So see, father, father. So father's brother is also called father. Mother's sister is also called. Now see, mother's brother is also called father. No concept of mama. Clear? Similarly, father's sister is also called mother. Bua is also called mother. And all the children are called brother, sister. No cousin, parallel, cross, anything. Nothing is there. So therefore, most classificatory, they have just classified ahead. Males ko ek naam, females ko ek naam, and siblings ko one naam. Most classificatory. And look at this example. One example is there which is most descriptive. This one, not this. This one, most descriptive. Okay, Sudanese kinship. So this is from the Sudan tribes. So you'll see there's a different term for every relation. Okay, see paternal cousins are in different notation. Okay, cross cousins and parallel cousins, different notation. Except for sister brother, you have different terms. This is what I meant by classificatory and descriptive. Clear? Don't worry about this. I will elaborate this when we'll come to kinship, different types of kinship. Okay, fine. Before that, with respect to Morgan, any other doubts with respect to Morgan? See, Morgan was one of those scholars who initiated field work. So here we will not write that he was an armchair anthropologist. He did most of his field work, okay? Because otherwise there was no way he could classify so many tribes and give examples, right? Critics of Morgan. Ethnocentric bias is always there because savagery, barbarism, civilization is being used, okay? He is not armchair, so he is good on that part, fieldwork tradition. What else? What else do you think he has missed on? Religion. He missed religion? Yes? Yes? He talks about evolution of marriage, socio-political organizations, sorry. He has no take on religion, okay? Except that all other points he has covered. Now coming to the god of religion, James Fraser. James Fraser is famous for his book Golden Bough, which came in 1890. He has a very interesting take on evolution of science. He believes, and you know this book, The Golden Bough, is in 24 volumes. So much extensive work on religion was done by him. And he explains the gradation, how societies earlier believed in magic, then in religion, and finally came science. This is the gradation which he gives. The name of the book, the year, 1890. 1890. See? It came in different volumes. Second book is Totemism and Exogamy. If you remember 2 books, it is enough. Okay. In parallel to the evolution scheme which he has given, magic, religion, science, he explained this in tandem with savagery, barbarism, civilization. The reason being that the earlier people, the savage people, they did not have any time to reason as to why certain things were happening. They did not know anything. So if anything different was happening around them, they said it is because of magic. Okay, this is what he believed, that savage people are so non-innovative that everything around them was resorted as magic. And he explains magic from using 2 principles: law of similarity and law of contact. Have you seen those black magic images where if they want to harm a person, they will put pins in the image? Okay, so that is law of similarity. Then law of contact is, if you see some nimbu mirchi on a road and you step it and you get that vibe or that energy, whatever that is law of contact. Okay, so he gave different examples that how magic operates, and he's considering people in the this savagery stage that they do not have any reasoning, so whatever is happening is resorted to magic. Clear? Second, barbaric people are equated with religion, okay, where man realizes that they cannot control nature, therefore they bow down in front of some superpower who is regulating nature. For example, who is regulating rain in the field, sunlight. So intensive kind of bonus towards a divine figure, therefore the evolution of religion. And during the civilizational stage, man started questioning everything. Therefore, age of rationality, and came the development of science. Okay? And he believes that the origin of this term is from totem. Okay, the origin of the term religion is from totem. He considers religion and totem to be synonymous. He has a perspective on totemism and exogamy also, where he explains that totem is nothing but a divine figurine which is considered to be harbored by dead people. For example, if someone elder dies in the house, they become a totem. And if any pregnancy happens in the house, it is considered because of the totem, because of the god. Right? And therefore, they practice clan exogamy, that you marry outside your clan, because that child is considered to be a product of their dead ancestor. So by this logic, he explains that how totemism and exogamy are related. Clan exogamy now is clear to you, right? There's another perspective that when there was a movement from magic towards religion, he believes that there was a phase when primitive people's magic failed. When they wanted to do something, they wanted to do anything which did not happen. That was the phase when they started to believe in a higher power. That is how the initial beginnings of religion is explained by him. Okay, and unsuccessful witchcraft led to religion. This is the term which he uses. Okay, and magic is the bastard sister of science. Strange terms. So see, savagery, barbarism, civilization. This point of view is held by Fraser also. Okay. So in savagery, human beings are irrational. Therefore, they think they can control nature by magic. But there came a point where they were not able to control it. Therefore, a realization of a superpower. Belief in God, religion started. And finally, the highest development is of science. Okay. Can you give me criticism of Fraser? Armchair anthropologist, first thing, because look at the volumes of book he has written on the basis of textual references. And he believed, if I go by his religion's evolutionary scheme, according to him, magic and science or magic and religion cannot coexist. But they do coexist, which was also highlighted by Malinowski, and which is true today also, right? So that you can understand that it is not necessary that always magic will give way to religion and religion will give way to science. No, they can coexist also. That point he did not adhere to. And another thing, while he started to give his evolutionary scheme, he considered early humans to be ignorant, that they are entirely relying on magic. They don't know anything. So not even a 0 degree of innovativeness was credited to them. So he considered them to be too ignorant during the savagery stage. Okay, these are his drawbacks, a criticism. Okay, now we are going to talk about Beethoven, German scholar. According to him, the societies have evolved in this manner. Hedonism to das Mutterrecht. So Mutter in German means mother, das means the, and Recht means right. So the mother's right. Then Dionysian and then Apollonian. So don't worry, these are simple terms, just that they have used different terminology. Hedonism is that period in society which is similar to promiscuous stage, where you cannot trace the father at all. and women are merely considered to be objects, objectification, right? Then came a phase. If you see, no, all these scholars will put matrilineality somewhere in between. So in the second stage, Das Mutteract, there is rule of the woman, the mother's right. Okay, the motherhood is considered to be a source of decorum, human stability, sacredness. So therefore, it is a woman's world. Then came the Dionysian trait. Dionysian is considered to be a negative trait and is synonymous with patriarchy being dominant. Dionysian highlights beginning of patriarchy, and Apollonian talks about the modern civilization where establishment of patriarchy has happened. Here you can also write father's right. Okay. So this scheme was given in his book Das Mutteract in 1851. Simple. Okay. I've taken one more scholar, last scholar for evolution, MacLennan. His book, name of his book is Primitive Marriage. कोई doubt है? नहीं? नहीं, बुक तो सिर्फ एक है, बुक तो सिर्फ ये है, मदर्स राइट. These are stages of society. Das Mutteract, mother's right, same thing. Das Mutteract जर्मन में है, बस इतना फर्क है. Now if you look at MacLennan, he explains about how different stages of society have found different forms of marriages. Now see, if we begin with our societies, we were predominantly hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers are dealing with the question of the next meal every day, I was telling you. So therefore, if there are more women in the family, they are going to be more mouths to feed. So over a period of time, women were considered to be burden on the subsistence economy, not just for the hunter-gatherers. Even if I talk about slash and burn agriculture, where agriculture actually began. So if there is a small patch of land on which the entire family is dependent. So if the number of women are more, the dependency increases while they are not working in the fields. So therefore, which resulted in female feticide. It was considered to be favorable to kill women so that you don't have to feed them. But as female feticide continued for a long duration of time, eventually shortage of women happened. And when shortage happened, what to do for marriage? One option is polyandry. Polyandry is one woman marrying multiple men, right? And second option was bride capture. Now, bride capture is a legitimate form of marriage in the tribal communities. We'll talk about this topic when we'll discuss marriage. Okay, so in tribal communities, marriage by capture is a well-established norm. When polyandry happens, there are some societies in Himachal today also who follow fraternal polyandry. Fraternal means what? Brothers. All brothers married to the same woman. That is what fraternal polyandry means. Draupadi, excellent example. And finally, fraternal polyandry leads to the evolution of patrilocal societies. What are patrilocal societies? Where father's home, yes, residing in the husband's or father's home. The name of book is Primitive Marriage. Did you get the broad idea of all the scholars? What are these people trying to say? They are giving evolutionary scheme according to them. जैसे MacLennan is trying to justify how patrilocality emerged, Because always whenever you study any society, they will keep matrilineality somewhere in between. It is considered to be an initial thing, not a culminatory thing. Culmination is in patriarchy, right? So everybody had their own take on how evolution of society and social institutions have been. Clear? Now, see, as we were discussing these scholars, we saw that there were a lot of criticism which these scholars will be given. That is why you have 8 schools of thought. And even outside those 8, today we have 2 more which are not a part of our syllabus. So therefore, naturally what will happen? To rectify the mistakes of these schools of thought, there will be more schools of thought who will say, no, no, listen to us, we have better arguments. And from this point onwards, after evolutionism, we'll see there is a significant shift towards fieldwork in anthropology, because fieldwork will be considered more relevant when you have to give any conclusion or any study. So therefore, the next school will be diffusionism. But there will still be some evolutionists, as these people were called classical evolutionists. There will be a group of people who will say, no, no, the idea of evolutionists was fine. There were only some mistakes. So they tried to rectify their mistakes and give their perspective. They are called neo-evolutionists. Why neo? Because these people are new ideas they are going to bring. Right? So naturally you will see one after the other school, the next school will try to rectify the mistakes of the previous one. Is classical evolutionism clear to you? See, now you have 2 days. On your end, please make sure that you study classical evolutionism. Otherwise, you will forget everything. After 7 days, it will become Greek and Latin. Okay? No, truly, you will not be able to register so many scholars, because when I'll teach you diffusion, again I'll give you at least 6 scholars and you will forget them. Every day is a new day, right? So if you have any doubts, go through classical evolutionism over time which you have at your disposal. Also write your answer on archaeological anthropology. This is the first formal answer which you are going to submit to me. Okay, short note on archaeological anthropology, origin and relevance. Definition, origin, relevance. Clear? Thank you so much. Yeah? 161. Primitive marriage. Sorry, 1865. 5. Hanji? Patrilocality. Patrilocality means staying with the husband's family after marriage. Basically, male line of inheritance. Okay? जैसे patrilineal, patriarchal, patrilocal, these are all similar things. Okay? Fraternal polyandry means one woman married to all brothers. Okay? Fraternal itself means brother. Fraternity, brotherhood, है ना? Try to break down the terms और उनका origin relate करने का कोशिश करो etymology से. Okay, term को break किया and try to understand what the term tries to say. Okay, following till now? Okay, so thank you so much. I'll see you on Monday. Thank you.